And first of all, I would like to thank you for your attendance today to this roundtable dedicated to skills transformation in a changing industry. We're going to have qualitative speakers today, so they will emphasize how can the mobility sectors bridge employment and sustainable transitions. But first, few words to the European Commission, to thank the European Commission for sponsoring this event in the framework of the European Years of Skills. Before to dive in this roundtable, a few general rules to follow. All your microphones are muted, so if you need to ask questions, please use the chat box. We will answer all your questions at the end of the roundtable or during the panels by our panelists themselves. Obviously, a short break is planned between the two panels if you need to grab some coffee. So this roundtable is organized under the aegis of French Automotive and Mobility Network. This network is gathering the 4 French mobility clusters and the French National Automotive Platform as well, the PFA. This roundtable will be divided in 2 panels. The first one dedicated to a discussion between clusters and regional players in order to identify efforts already made and remaining gaps. The second panel will be moderated by my colleague Mathieu Sareva, and will be focused to give some insights from EU-level stakeholders about how to fill these previously identified gaps. So without further ado, let me introduce you our first panel. 4 of them are working in the French cluster to further develop skills and in the mobility sector, So let me introduce Elisabetta Shanichova, Training and Skill Manager at CARA cluster, Véronique Rottier, European and Innovative Project Coordinator of ID for Mobility, Aude-Marie Dubois, Training Project Manager for NextMove, and last but not least, Ludovic Party, Pair for East Manager for Pôle Véhicule du Futur. To complete our panel, I would like to also thank Maxi Fenrich, Cross-Border Training Project Manager at Caen Est region in France, and Anna Spettenhauser, Deputy Head of EU Office for Stuttgart region, Germany. So, to set up the framework, our first discussion, I would like to give the floor to 3 of the 4 mobility clusters representatives and ask you if you had to describe in 1 sentence why clusters are essential vectors for skills development and employment policy implementation. What would it be? Maybe, Aude-Marie, you can have the floor first.
Thank you, Baptiste. Nice to meet all people today. NextMove is a cluster based in Normandy and Paris region, and cluster it's network made of academics and industry especially. So I think that we are an essential vector for skills development because the innovations in the sector, like electrification, battery, circular economy, and its new economic model are major. And this know-how is mainly held by private companies. And these companies are the heart of the training construction process, which must trickle down to the training players. So academics, high schools, etc. So cluster act as facilitators, bringing these players together and supporting projects also, for me.
Thank you, Aude-Marie. Maybe Ludovic, you have another insight to share.
Yes, thank you. So many companies are facing problems meeting their recruitment needs for several reasons. A problem of attractiveness linked to industry and automotive companies, and a dry-up employment basin with a low unemployment rate. So the Pôle Véhicule du Futur considers that this to be a major issue that needs to be tackled to enable companies to continue to grow. So the PVF, therefore, creates a link between the various employment and training sectors to take into account the need to adapt training courses to the new skills to be created. to adapt training courses in line with needs and to develop initiatives to raise awareness of careers in the automotive, transport, and mobility sectors.
Thank you, Ludovic. And maybe from CARA, Elisabetta.
Yes, so everything that the previous speaker said is, of course, true. And I would complete it by saying that maybe one of the forces of clusters is their territorial anchoring. So we have, by our nature, a fine-grained knowledge of the different actors in our ecosystem. And thus, we have a good understanding of their needs. And so that we can develop actions that are relevant to a particular territory.
Thank you. So if I understand correctly, clusters emphasize connections between local stakeholders from different backgrounds, allowing deep collaborations. And I think local collaboration is here the cornerstone. I believe in France, we have local initiative in all regions that work at making this collaboration a reality. They are called skills and qualification campuses. And maybe, Ludovic, would you be able to give us some insights of how this initiative were born?
Yes, of course. So in 2015, the Pôle Véhicule du Futur, in conjunction with the PFA, Automotive Industry and Mobility Platforms, looked at how to take account of changes in vehicle technology industry with the advent of 4.0 and management, which therefore applied to the Plan d'investissement d'avenir, a national scheme, and took part in the creation of the Campus des Métiers, CARA campus in Bourgogne-Franche-Comté region. The PFA and the automotive transport and mobility clusters are behind these automotive campuses. The aim is to bring together the worlds of education and industry to make the professions more attractive, to adapt initial and continuing training to support teachers in their knowledge and new technologies, and to put educational establishments and companies in touch with each other.
So at first, it was a national vision that created these skills and qualification campuses, right? But each French region has its own campus, right? So, Ludovic, what's yours is focused on?
So for Bourgogne-Franche-Comté and Grand Est, we have continued to the creation, we contribute, to the creation of two campuses for trades and qualification, one on digital and industry 4.0 in the Grand Est region, and one on the automotive and mobility of the future in Bourgogne-Franche-Comté. These two themes are extremely important because we need to have the resources to support the ecosystem in the new technologies that affect processes, robotization, data exploitation, artificial intelligence, data analysis, but also in the development of vehicles toward electromobility and the hydrogen vehicle. In all phases of life, from design to manufacture and recycling, in a context of lowest possible carbon footprint.
Thank you. So digital and industry 4.0, right? I know that for NextMove also is coordinating a campus, right, Anne-Marie?
Yes, exactly. In the Paris region, we are NextMove in I especially is actively involved in the project of a campus to create and develop the campus circular mobility industry. The origin of this campus is based on the Renault project Refactory. It's a conversion of its automotive activity into several circular project activities on the plant of Flins, just near Paris. So the interest was that major player was in such an innovative project with a dual approach. One, expertise of an industrial player to create some training. It's important, it's very important. And second, it's the opportunity to be supported by local and academic players and to enter into a collaborative ecosystem approach as a cluster of NextMove or Pôle Véhicule du Futur or CARA is made. NextMove, the role of NextMove is as a facilitator and was to integrate into this Center of Vocational Excellence, as Ludovic said, the Campus des Métiers et des Qualifications. It's a particularity in France. And the aim of which was to open it to other players, as is the case today with preferred partners like Forvia, Valeo, Veolia, and to open the ecosystem of industrial and academics. So the aim was to combine the specific expertise of two entities, industry and academics, in order to maximize the impact of the training from Bac Pro, apprenticeship, bachelor, level upward to the master or doctorate. That's the experience that we are in today and today to continue the development of this campus.
Okay, so collaboration and open ecosystem are still
Exactly.
one key word, right? But this time for circular economy. Maybe for ID for mobility, Veronica, I know that you also have a campus, right?
Yes, exactly. So I'm Veronique from ID for Mobility. I'm really pleased to be here with my colleagues. So we are in the west of France, and I'm here especially to talk to you about the Campus des Métiers and Qualification in the west of France, which is focused on automotive and mobility training. So we are right in the spot of what we're talking about. The campus is based in Le Mans, and we can see it in the fields that the campus deals with. For example, it deals with motorcycle and car racing, so you can see the link with Le Mans tracks. But we also work on automotive industry in general and precision mechanics or electrical engineering. So it's really all the fields around needed for automotive and mobility. And the players that are involved are obviously all the academics, but also companies such as Renault, Manitou, or Stellantis, even Scania for trucks. And also we have in Le Mans the Technicentre SNCF, which is the platform for the railway company in France, and they are also part of this campus. So you can see that as for all our colleagues, the campus is really a powerful tool to bring everybody together to work on those skills needed for the industry.
Quite a well-run just the campus that you have, and it's cross-fertilization between even the different sectors beyond automotive. That's very interesting. And last but not least, Cara, I know that you also have a campus, right?
As a matter of fact, we do. So similarly to what my colleagues just described here in Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region, we have our campus axed on electromobility. And it's focusing on vehicle design, validation, and maintenance. It is addressed to, so according to the European qualification framework, levels 4 to 8, similarly to the other campuses. And it was born from several educational institutions that already had trainings on design and maintenance of vehicles, but they needed to integrate elements on new mobilities, in particular electromobility and other energy types. Mainly this was the need following two reasons. First of all, political reasons, because we have programmed an end of production of thermic motor vehicles in France by 2035, and also because our region stimulates a lot the development of new mobilities like electric mobilities and hydrogen mobilities. So these different educational institutions needed to have new relationships designed with their industrial partners. But there's also a rich local ecosystem we have here. We have around 300, well, more than 300, 366 to be precise, actors in our network who are implicated on all levels of the automatic value chain operating in electromobility, which added a lot, helped a lot.
Thank you. The keyword here, I think, is needs. The campus came from a need identified by the ecosystem itself. So it answers a need, which is quite important if you want to create a long-term initiative. Thank you. And well, you still have the floor, so maybe you can give us some concrete example of a replicable deliverable or replicable activities that your campus has already provided.
So what we created together with the campus are mainly open access resources on electromobility, which are available on our website, and I can share then some links in the chat. So I would like to focus on two concrete deliverables, which is first of all a set of 5 short stop motion videos on lithium-ion batteries. So describing their functioning, life cycle, integration in the vehicle, etc. These videos are available in French and in English, and they're designated to general public as all of our open access resources. We also co-created an adaptive e-learning module on power electronics, so also acts on electromobility, which helps to understand what power electronics is, how it works in a vehicle, and it's also available in French and in English. There is more to it, and I will be happy to answer your questions if you want.
Thank you, Elizabeth. French and English, that's quite impressive for French clusters, I know. Thank you. I know, Ludovic, also you have some interesting initiative from your campus.
Yes, on the topic of attractiveness, we work with secondary schools and an event called Girls Their Industry. The aim was to get groups of pupils to make a short film about the job of industry mentors. This playful approach helped to raise awareness of industrial careers among volunteer girls. A second action was to involve professionals in training courses, for example, in maintenance professions, with the presentation of IoT in industry, considered a priority by companies and teachers in an unemployment area among 14 skills identified as new or to be developed. For example, robotics, wireless sensors, industrial computer networks, etc. A third action has enabled the development of a collaborative educational platform for hfactory.tech, which collects photo and videos of company and build immersive training modules in a virtual 3D factory. This gives teacher and student access to teaching resources using innovative, immersive tool that makes it even more attractive and engaging for learners. This platform is freely accessible. www.4hfactory.tech.
Thank you, Ludovic. And I think we will give you in the chat box the link to the platform. Thank you. And it's quite interesting, the inclusion, gender inclusion, especially in a male-oriented industry that could be perceived for the automotive industry is really important, I think, nowadays. And also the digital aspects. Digital can reduce space and time and make the people work closely together, which is also the main focus for a cluster. So I think you're right on point here. Aude-Marie, I know that you
Yes.
also have some activities.
Yes, a concrete example of collaboration with the campus could be a training course created as part of the campus, the fundamentals of the circular economy. Initially created and aimed at Renault because they have 2,000 people to train in the plant of Flins. And it's now accessible to everyone, professionals. It's adapted to other activities, not only automotive sector, and academics. For example, they have trained some teachers of BTAs in French. It's Advanced Technician Certificate, who will in September provide these training courses in the high schools in Paris region, located near the plant of Renault. The thing that it's important to for the campus and for us, for NextMove, to involve all local players into this new industrial and economic model. The circular economy is an innovation, a model economic innovation and industrial, and we have to train all people, academics and professionals around the plants of Renault, because they are but also in national. It's important also. It's not in English, it's only in French for the moment, but we hope that we could create a training in English soon.
Yes, I know you will have in English. For all our colleagues that are not speaking French,
Exactly.
thank you, Marie. I think here what is quite interesting is the trainer aspect, from the industry to the academics, from the needs to the training. I think this is quite interesting, and that's very great that you already have implemented it and have a great expertise in it.
Yes.
Yes, if you want to add something. No?
Yeah, we participate into the project of the campus, but also we are a training organization certified Calliope. It's a quality certification like ISO 9001 standard for trainings. So this makes it possible to finance training with public funds. That's the certification. So NextMove is able to train employees from startup to SMEs and or large companies also, but we don't deliver certification or diplomas. And we can train members. We've got in-house trainers and members trainers also. So we offer some trainings, for example, digitalization for performance. We developed training modules and for that they were for SMEs especially. And we design it of in-house training courses. And NextMove relied on member skills like cobots. Cobots, I don't know if you are if you know that, but it's robots that interact with humans. And we have a member ID service with whom NextMove purchased 2 cobots. And our member ID service produced the training modules. So this collaboration enabled purchase and design of the training thanks to NextMove, and allows our member to highlight his expertise. So NextMove promotes this training course within its network, and some trainings are in French and some are in English also, for electric vehicle, for example. So if you're interested, we can share our internet link.
Yes, please. And obviously you will have the contact of all the speakers here if you want to get in contact after. Thank you, Anne-Marie. What is quite interesting that you, by your organization, you facilitate access to people to the training by being a training certified organizations, which is, I think, it's quite important to facilitate the engagements of people in the training. And once again, the collaborations are using trainers from the cluster itself and from the ecosystem, which is quite interesting and maybe another way to collaborate. Thank you very much. So what I can see here is that clusters goes beyond their mission, fostering collaboration, right? And they can develop their own expertise in terms of skills development. I know that also, Véronique, you have some expertise, right? In your own clusters.
Yes, we do. For example, we've built a training course based on one of our technical platform. Actually, the how can I say that? The start of this project was that a technical platform has been built near the Stellantis plant in Rennes. This platform is called CARA, and it provides equipment that can be used by its member to test new processes and so on. And thanks to a call from the PFA, so the French platform for automotive, we designed with CARA and some of the local academics really practical course to train students, but also professional on the use of those equipments, which are really state-of-the-art equipment for processes in terms of Industry 4.0, if I may say so. So the idea is really to use real equipment on real condition to help students study topics like ergonomics or the usage of cobots or robots. So yeah, the idea is really to use industrial means to train the students, and it has been a real success, and we are still developing some new material based on that collaboration.
Thank you, Véronique. So once again, cluster or gates to their ecosystem, industrial, academic, even students. So it's quite interesting to get in contact with the cluster if you need to have a great overview of what their ecosystems needs. And I think what is quite interesting here and what you say is to use the industrials means to train. And it's a bit like what Aude-Marie already said, to each the companies have the knowledge and have identified the needs, and they need to be put together with academics, with students, in order to narrow these great worlds and facilitate connection and collaboration. Thank you, Véronique, for these insights. So if clusters foster collaboration and have their own skills and have their own expertise in terms of skills development. Now I would like to turn to our region's representative. We saw that clusters have a strong territorial identity. Each campus is linked to a region. So the connection with region seems quite obvious here, but I would like to dive into this obvious thing and to know, according to you, how you see and use clusters as a tool to support regional skills development and policy implementations. Maybe Anna, you can give us some insights from the region Stuttgart.
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm very glad to be here in this event among all these other great speakers. Yes, as you might know, Stuttgart region is a very relevant location when it comes to automotive industry, and it also counts as a very example of a complete automotive clusters, as the value chains are much more regionally connected than in other competing locations. That's why clusters are really essential for us, and they're also very well organized, as we have different cluster initiatives in our region, who especially, I mean, they're all, of course, organized in the topical areas of automotive industries, but they're also super active in the field of qualification and up and reskilling. Collaboration, not only in clusters, but in general in our region, is key, as the lack of highly skilled laborers has been a topic, I would almost say, ever since. But at least in the last 20 to 25 years, it has become, or it has been approached in a more strategical way. And two examples, maybe. One example is a recently established project which bases on a cluster. The cluster is called CARS, and the new initiative CARS 2.0, which which really supports businesses with information and services to tackle the various challenges in the current transformation. And the project is focused on topics, technological change, obviously, digital transformation, education, and funding initiatives. And I would like to add on with the other project two things which have already been pointed out several times by the participants here is the access to information. And that's why we started a couple of years ago, I think 2 years ago, we started a project or a proposal for a project which was established last year. It's called the so-called Q Guide, Qualification Guide, Region Stuttgart, and it's literally translated a platform for up and reskilling. Together with 15 partners in the region, really big OEMs, but also smaller size companies, web providers, chambers of commerce, crafts, and so on, labor representatives, we would like to provide a platform where people can really get orientation and information. Because as we learned, qualification is not always on top of the agenda when it comes to strategic decisions in companies. So that's why really orientation and access to information is most crucial. So all in all, clusters without it wouldn't work in our region. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's good to know that cluster also have a use beyond French borders. So it's quite interesting. And what I think is quite interesting also is the access to information. Most of our work, I'm also working for a cluster, so I know that a lot, is about facilitating the access to many kind of information. And I think here is the key: facilitate, describe, and make it accessible the most easy as possible. Thank you, Anna. And I know that even in France, we have some collaboration with region, right? Maxi, would you like to have the floor?
Yes, thank you very much, Jean-Baptiste, and thank you for the invitation. I'm very glad to be here today. So I don't know if you know, but the region Grand Est is a major production center for the automotive industry on a national scale, so counting for 25% of French automotive production and exports. And also the region Grand Est is also the third largest automotive region in France for manufacturers and the second largest for suppliers. But obviously the stakes are high. For example, we have seen a loss of 37,000 jobs at regional living level between 2008 and 2019, which represents a fall of 33%. And that's why paradigm shifts in this sector will have a major impact, and we need to be prepared to support these changes. And so to be relevant, we need to have a detailed understanding of the industry and the challenges it faces. And this is precisely what clusters can provide, actually. And the knowledge will help us to implement the regional strategy by identifying the stakeholders in the fields of industry, but also academia and obviously the local authorities which I represent today. And thanks to the clusters and deep knowledge in the issues in the field, the region can integrate strategic orientation, and the strategic framework then will be applied in the strategic plan, such as the Business Act Grand Est, which is a recovery and transformation plan. And currently we are working on a regional strategy to support the automotive industry. And it is through the regular but also fruitful exchanges with the clusters that we can build shared expertise around the industry. And also the region Grand Est has identified 5 main employment training challenges in the sector. For example, for instance, responding to the current recruitment difficulties faced by companies in all trades, or adapting the training offer, or supporting employees undergoing professional retraining. So together we can identify the needs of the various players, including skills requirements. And so the aim is to adapt skills requirements and support the development of skills for all sectors of the population by adapting the training offer and to cope with transitions, but also to anticipate the skills requirements of the future and for the region, which actually has the responsibility for training in France, to create training courses is in line with the needs, as you said before, Jean-Baptiste. And so to sum up, the region can bring together the key players in the economics and training to work together, and with clusters providing very specific expertise in different but also complementary fields.
Thank you, Maxi. Detailed knowledge from the ecosystem. That's why I think it's quite interesting. Cluster have the feet on the ground, if I may say. We are close to our industry, to SMEs. So we have this ability to bring to the region, to local stakeholders, what our companies are looking for and what are their difficulty. And we're very glad that the region understood this collaboration and used the clusters as such. So thank you. And what I think also was quite interesting is to adapt the training. As you mentioned, in the France region has a major role in the skills policy developments. So we, and by we, I mean the clusters, the company, the region, and the local authority have to work together. And collaboration is once again the main keywords. So thank you, Maxi. Maybe to conclude this roundtable, I would like to give the floor to each of our panelists today. And I would like to know, according to you, your expertise, in maybe one sentence, what is the main next step to fully accomplish the employment and sustainable transitions? Maxine, you have the floor, so maybe you can give us some insights.
Yes, thank you. So I would think it would be interesting to look further ahead at the skills of tomorrow so that we are well prepared for the new professions, and working together across borders and exchanging practices would give us greater visibility and better tools. By sharing knowledge, we can find common answers and draw inspiration from what we need in terms of labor recruitment, for example, or upskilling and reskilling. And the work between institutional and economic players not only helps us to support projects and experiments, but also to identify the needs of the various players. So I would say that the networking is also very important for peer-to-peer exchanges. And maybe we also need to do more publicized the initiatives, and perhaps the European Year of Skills is a showcase for this.
Yes, I hope so. Networking and publicity is quite important to understand the right challenges. Thank you. And maybe, Anna, would you like to have the floor to share some thoughts?
Yes, thank you. So I would actually add on to what Maxi already said. So I think the most important thing is to work together, to exchange, but never forget that behind every skill there is a person. So always involve the people, the staff, the employees, and try to take them on this learning journey together. And first and second, start acting, not analyzing, not waiting, but really start acting soon.
That's a great philosophy. Thank you. And yes, behind each skill, there is a person. The human factor is quite important, especially for skills and training. So yes, exactly. Inclusion, that's like I mentioned Ludovic before, is also quite important. Thank you very much. Ludovic, would you like to have the floor and share some thoughts?
Yes, the main issues of knowledge are knowledge of the electric vehicle powertrain and maintenance and repair operations for electric and hydrogen vehicles. So the Power Vehicle du Futur addresses these issues through a collaborative approach with secondary schools, companies, trade associations, and garages. For example, in towns with low emission zones, for example, identifying needs, helping to create training models with the help of immersive digital tools like Metaverse, for example, in a 4H factory, with a factory, a car garage, a low emission zone garage, etc. But also with practical exercises using physical teaching resources.
Thank you, Ludovic. Aude-Marie, maybe you would like to share some thoughts.
Yes, I think that circular economy is a central theme in the transformation of the value chain in the automotive sector. We see the development of circular economy in the, within companies, and it needs support for scaling up, reskilling, as you said before, of employees and who are undergoing the transformation of their jobs due to the emergence of new technologies. Transversality of the circular economy maximizes impact. And it's very important to share that it's a new idea of automotive sector to integrate aftermarket with the large player that we have in France, especially Renault, and I wanted to say PSA, but it's not PSA, Stellantis. I searched a new name, for example. And the integration of the aftermarket is very important, I think, with the circular economy.
Thank you. Véronique, maybe, if you have some thought to share.
Yes, actually, I'm in line with all of what has been just said, but I wanted just to emphasize the need of, how can I say that, a broad line or a clear path to work on global scale on electromobility and so on, because we really need to have new skills and competencies available for our companies. But in the same time, we really need to work on local scale and work on practical training and courses that are easy to deploy and develop with local stakeholders. So what I would say is that, yeah, we need to work on two scale, the general one with a clear view of what we need for the future and the challenges that awaits the automotive sector, but also to work on maybe smaller but more easy to put in place courses and training with our companies. And maybe because it's also easier to get involved, to make SMEs involved in those kind of small scale experiments.
Exactly, from local to international. I like it. Elisabetta, maybe you would like to have the floor?
Just like Veronique said, what has been said by the previous speakers is of course very important for the future perspectives of our activities. And I also liked a lot what you just said, Anna, about the humans behind all this. And this is precisely one of the axes I would like to explore in the future here at CARA, is addressing the human resources departments of our members and trying to figure out their particular problems that they encounter as human resources, their recruitment difficulties, required skills issues, and create spaces where they can share their practices, and in particular practices in our mobility industries. And in this way, experiment on a local level, a form of interaction between these actors, these support functions of our members, and then see how it can be then explored on a more large scale.
Thank you, Elisabetta. So maybe to sum up this first panel, clusters and region already have implemented some greater activities, mainly focusing on what they are born with, so collaboration skills between industry, between academics, even local authorities, in order to further develop connection and facilitate information to go from a point A to a point B. With this collaboration, each cluster have a great overview and a great connection with their local ecosystem and are facilitators in order to identify their needs. And even some of the cluster have developed their own training expertise to provide it to their own ecosystem. So it's quite interesting to understand and know what already has been done today. And I like your last answers, because in this we have identified what will be the next challenges, and it's great news for this for this European Year of Skills. That the promotions is quite important. Promotion of the skills challenges, even for SMEs or for big companies. Transformation of skills in the employment ecosystem regarding the innovation. It's quite also impressive how the impact of innovation can have on jobs and on small or even big companies. To better understand technological needs, that's, I think, what you say, Ludovic. It's quite interesting as well to further develop this kind of activities from local to international, as Veronique said. Work on two scales, and the human factors at last, but not the least. Human factors and human resources indeed are key actors for big companies in the skills development of their employees. So we also need to connect with them even further, even more.
I think it's time to restart with the second panel. So as Jean-Baptiste explained in introduction, this roundtable is divided in two different sessions, and now this is the second one, in which we will have a more, let's say, institutional approach. The purpose of this session will be to address the question how to fill the gap between skill capacities in Europe and new needs resulting from the automotive and mobility sector decarbonization and transition toward electromobility. To reflect about this question and to complement the very interesting first panel, we'll have the chance to get the perspectives of EU-level players. So I welcome around the table, around the virtual table, 4 high-level speakers from different EU-level organizations. So we'll have around the table Jakub Stolfa, President of the Automotive Skills Alliance, Lorena Ionetta, Deputy Head of Unit at the European Commission DG GROW, Muriel Anti, Senior Vice President, Government Affairs at LHH, a company of the ADECO Group, and Patrick Benamar, Learning and Development Vice President at Renault Group. And I'm Mathieu Sareva. I am consultant in Brussels for the French Automotive Mobility Network, and I will have the great pleasure to moderate this session. So let's dive into the topic. First, I propose to give the floor to Jakub to introduce and to frame the topic from the Automotive Skills Alliance perspective. And then after that, I will invite the other panelists to introduce their views in the same way, in ideally less than 10 minutes, in order to, after that, keep a time for an open discussion. So Jakub, you have the floor. You can start.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, and thanks to inviting me here. And it was also very good first panel. So I hope I will start this panel also at least on the same level. Let's jump into the presentation. And firstly, I wanted just to use an overview of that, what is happening in the automotive mobility ecosystem. And I really like this picture that is created by Seaga in the Resist project, and I see also colleagues here. So shout out to you. And you can see nice overview what is happening, because of course we are always speaking about technological changes and what kind of technologies are coming and how this will influence the automotive sector as such. But it is much more broader from the technological perspective, from the energy perspective, so what kind of energy we are going to use and how to get a clean and green energy. And of course, from the geopolitical view, and of course, also vulnerability of the value chain, and also the green transformation, circular economy, and also, of course, economic and businesses. I cannot go into the details, but what I wanted to mention here is also the social perspective, and the social perspective from the perspective of that the changes of the life that people will need and must basically accept the need of the lifelong learning and basically change their skills during their lifetime. But of course, it's not so easy to say it this way, because that's all the societal change, that's the awareness about it. This is also to offer the opportunities to the people for the lifelong learning activities and to offer them opportunities to change the career. So as it was also mentioned, it's a human-centric approach, and this is, of course, wider even than the automotive mobility, but of course, it's a very important in the automotive mobility ecosystem that is in huge and rapid transition. And from that perspective, you have also educational and training providers that must react on those trends. And this reaction is because of the many challenges, and maybe we can discuss it in the panel discussion later on, because of the many challenges, sometimes very difficult to do so. You need to have a new curricula. You need to have a modular offer so that to change the curricula, it always takes the time. If it's a secondary education, if it's tertiary education, or if it's lifelong learning provider, you need to support more the lifelong learning and offer as such. You also, and I'm always saying there is a lot of initiative and a lot of interesting training and activities, but it is not visible. I have also seen at today's panel discussion that there are trainings. There is a virtual tour of the factory, which is great. And that's something that we are also trying to mainstream and to basically show out throughout all the Europe. And that's why we have created the Automotive Skills Alliance, which is the large-scale Bike for Skills partnership in the mobility transport automotive ecosystem. And it's here to strengthen the collective actions on skills. And it's, as mentioned, in the industrial ecosystem, mobility, transport, automotive, official Bike for Skills. And it was launched in November 2020 as the first 3 pioneering partnerships. And we are very happy to announce that we are having more than 110 members working together, from representing industry, irrespective of size, representing education and training providers all around Europe. We are having also 14 regions on board, and some of them I see also here at today's roundtable. We have also social partners, because this perspective is very important to support the career pathways and the transition, and of course research and others. And I will just very quickly scroll through the logos. So as said, industry respective size, social partners in European level, education and training providers, if it's a university, if it's a secondary education provider, if it's a lifelong learning provider, other partners as ADECO Group or regions and municipalities from all around Europe, including France. And what's the focus of the alliance, and what's our focus to support this closing of the gap, as this panel is called, is of course, firstly, the collaboration. Because as I have said, there is a collaboration on the regional level, there is a collaboration on a European level. And the goal of the collaboration is to firstly initiate new projects. But secondly, as I have already mentioned in the first slides, it's mainstream existing projects and initiatives, because we are not starting from the scratch. There's a lot that might be mainstreamed and shown around Europe, and others might follow these activities. And of course, execute the upskilling, reskilling activities. For that, you need a skills intelligence. You need to know where we are heading to. And there is, of course, a lot of reports, there is a lot of studies on the European level from blueprint projects, from all other initiatives coming with that. What are the trends? What are the needed job roles and skills that needs to be covered? But of course, this needs a continuous update. And on the other hand, in the skills intelligence, we are looking at that to support, to initiate, to enable creation of the new training courses, of course, the modular, recognized, and so on. For that, we are having also our pillar on tools So we are having our European catalog of the training courses that I will show you later on, and to have a easier access to education training, and not just for the companies, but also for education training providers. And mainly, but last not least, is also best practices to really share among partners what's existing, what others might follow. And for that, we participate in, we collaborate our members in different working groups and of course through the projects. But some concrete examples, I have just selected some concrete examples that we are doing in the ASA on the European level, which might also, of course, help the regional collaboration then. And firstly, it is BAT Forum for VT teachers. That's a forum that we organize in the different regions or venues around Europe. It was in Čelettia. We have seen Northvolt Gigafactory, or recently it was in Škoda Auto, and it's going to other countries in the following years. And this is basically forum for the teachers to see what are the developments in the battery sector, to really have their hands on, to see if it's a gigafactory or if it's an integration of the battery to the car, and to be the multiplier of the change, to exchange also the practices, and to commonly also see the training courses that they might use in their education. Second example that we are happy to hold and have in our Automotive Skills Alliance is a study visit. And we had a first study visit in the Stuttgart region that we have seen also in the first panel. And we were in Bosch company, in Mercedes, in Motor Vehicles Competence Center of Stuttgart. And we have openly discussed the challenges and how the education and training is really being done on the floor, and what are the needs, and how we can really support each other in that. And for that, as mentioned, we have, for instance, our learning platform as a tools. So online platform for hosting online courses. We are having more than 40 online courses, all free of charge. So if you are interested, just pull out your smartphone, scan this QR code, and you can see the training courses in the automotive as such, in R&D, if it's cybersecurity engineer, if it's ADAS, if it's other electronic powertrain, massive online open course, or in the battery sector. And of course, others are coming. And I would like to also encourage you, if you like to share your courses, it's that one-stop shop service that we would like to, as a Pack for Skills partnership, provide. And secondly, we have a skills framework. And this is the one-stop shop database, where basically is more than 140 courses linked. So if you host your training course anywhere, you can basically offer it through this framework, which then offers the possibility to issue micro-credentials. And this allows the possibility of the recognition of the training, of the recognition of the attendees, successful attendees of these trainings. So this is some sort of example and pilot of this European collaboration on the trainings. That was just very quick pitch on basically the topics in this panel, and I'm very happy for the further discussions. Of course, if you like to contact me on LinkedIn, it's there, and also email. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jakub. I come back on my presentation. Yeah. Now we'll leave the floor to Lorena to continue with overviews on to have the European Commission perspective on skills. Perfect.
Okay, good afternoon from Brussels, and thanks a lot for inviting me here today. I'm glad Jakub spoke first, because I can refer throughout my presentation to some of these concrete initiatives. And it gives a background to what I'm saying. I will focus my presentation. Maybe I should say first a few words about myself. So I work in DG GROW, which is the Director General of the Commission dealing with internal market, SMEs, entrepreneurship, and industry. We are looking at skill in the context of the industrial policy, because my colleagues from DG Employment look purely at skills, and they are in charge of the European Year of Skills and other initiatives. So I'll focus on skills from my perspective of the industrial policy. In the mobility unit, we not only deal with automotive, although it's the major part of what we are dealing with, but also we look at other components of the mobility ecosystem, which is shipbuilding, rail industry, and even biking industry. And I would like to you can go to maybe to the first slide. I would like to present you something which is maybe much wider than skills, and this may be something which is less known to you from the skills world, but which is very important for the from the industrial point of view. I will present you what we call the transition pathways. This is a process, a collaborative process, and what actually we call it a co-creation process with stakeholders, launched by the May 2021 EU industrial policy. So we have one industrial policy from March 2020, just a few days before the pandemics broke out, and we have updated our industrial strategy in May 2021 to take into account the lessons learned from the pandemics. And one of the initiatives under this new updated industrial strategy was the transition pathways for the 14 mobility ecosystems. These are those which were shown actually also on Jakub's slide. There was like a marguerite with all the 14 ecosystems, and mobility is one of them. So what is this about? It's a bottom-up process. We are working with the relevant stakeholders, whether it's industry, social partners, regions, NGOs, to identify further actions needed to accelerate the green and digital transition, but also to boost the resilience of the EU industry. So the EU has put on the table a lot of initiatives to foster the green and digital transition. We want to know and identify together with the stakeholders what else is needed. Have we identified all the barriers? Who should do more to address these barriers? It doesn't have to be the EU level. It can be the national level, it can be the regional level, it can be the local level, it can be stakeholders themselves, various actors in the value chain. So what we have done is to put all stakeholders together, to speak to each other, to identify these further actions that needs to be taken to accelerate the twin transition and to enhance resilience. This is the whole process, which I summarize here, which started basically with an industrial strategy, as I mentioned, but then we launched a public consultation, and we are now at the level, if you see here, towards the end of the bullet, like the greenish ones, under the co-creation roundtables. And I will present the social roundtable, which basically focuses on skills. Because skills is part of this. Why skills? Is because we have several building blocks of our transition pathways. One is technologies and infrastructure, favorable regulatory framework, access to funding and innovation. But fourth is a skills, and is a fourth building block, and it's part and parcel of the industrial policy for the mobility ecosystem. So I will present the co-creation roundtable on social aspects. So we can go to the next slide, please. So how it works, actually, it's European Commission is a co-chair, and various other institutions or organizations, sorry, are co-chairing. And I will show you you can go to the next slide. So we have 7 roundtables. The first 3 of them focuses on common issues for the 4 components: automotive, rail, shipbuilding, and biking. I know we are focusing today on automotive, but it is important to also know, and we are speaking a lot about cooperation and collaboration, and this is also important, and there are a lot of synergies within the 4 components. So social dimension is one, and it was co-chaired by Industrial and CEMET. so the metal industry employers. The second was on research and innovation. Third is regional, and of course in this regional one a lot of issue came out and linked to the skills, because we have heard how important it is, the regional dimension. And then the last 4 roundtables, it's about one for each component of the mobility ecosystem. We can go to the next slide, please. I will first explain what is next after. Does it appear normally? Oh, voilà. We can do that. 4 of them. There are 4. You can click 4 times because this is faster. So number 1, basically it says that in the industrial forum, which is an expert group covering the 14 ecosystem, we have come up with a blueprint, a skeleton for these transition pathways reports. A second is the public consultation document. Third, we are at this stage. We are after all the 7 roundtables, which are finished now. Based on the outcome of those roundtables, we are publishing in the autumn, hopefully, what we call the transition pathways policy report, where we will identify these further actions and by whom. And the fourth is pledges and commitments by the stakeholders and industry themselves. So we will go back after we identify the actions and call for concrete commitments and pledges by various private actors and regions and other stakeholders. Now we can go a bit to the substance, or I present. Next slide, please. Yes. So just to say what are the roundtables about is we bring various stakeholders, and for instance, ASA with Jakub is the Skills Alliance is part of this roundtable, regions as well, industry, social partners. So we get together to have an open discussion about the challenges and the needs and the current state of affairs regarding, for instance, in this case, skills and social dimension of the transition, with the idea of identifying further actions and recommendation. No, sorry, no, you can stay to that slide, please. And I spoke that afterwards there will be the pledges and commitments by the stakeholders, and it is not an expert group, so it is really co-creation. Now a bit of a substance, and it will liaise with some of the issues that came already in today's panels. Can you go to the next slide? Voila. So what I can give you a flavor of what are the discussions about in the skills roundtable. Again, this is why it says common, is because it's for all 4 components of the ecosystem, but it very much applies to the automotives as well. That there are both opportunities and threats in the twin transition. There is a study from the Boston Consulting Group that shows that there will be 2.4 million workers to be upskilled and reskilled by 2030 in the automotive industry, out of which, for instance, the Battery Alliance Academy identified that only 800,000 workers need to be skilled and upskilled into the battery industry. But it is also an opportunity, because there will be also a lot of new jobs created in some of the emerging jobs, for instance, in the battery sectors. Then we have also identified that the skill shortages apply across the mobility ecosystem, so the 4 components, but also across all the value chain. So car manufacturers, suppliers, car dealers, repairer workshop, but also in a growth area like batteries or charging station. Geographical concentration, there is an importance of regions, because that's where transition is happening. And I think this came out in the first panels today, because some of the regions are, or the automotive industry are the main employers for certain regions and in certain member states. Aging, I think this is did not come up today, but 1/4 of the workforce in the automotive is above 50 years old. Women underrepresented, they represent in 2021 only 20% of the workforce in the automotive. Attractiveness of the industry. I think this came up very strongly in our roundtable. That is very difficult to attract young people. That is not appealing, and this is one of key issues. And all this is a particular concern for SMEs. Of course, the shortages, attracting talent. This was a particular point. And one issue which is not to be overlooked is the lack of data. So we need proper mapping to inform policy making at various levels, EU, national, local. And last but not least, the implementation of regulation. That regulation is not a barrier. We have a lot of regulation, whether it's working condition, information and consultation of workers, or council recommendation on just transition, but they have to be implemented. Last slide is about what we could do, and for instance, the Skills Alliance and some of the actions mentioned by the cluster this morning addresses and brings solutions to all these problems. Skills shortages, identification and updating adapting skilling, upskilling and reskilling programs, and skills intelligence and partnership, for instance, that all stakeholders, whether it's industry, social partners, local authorities, or training institutions, need to be involved. And the Skills Alliance, the Automotive Skills Alliance, is a very good example of that. Again, also ASA and other initiative. It's a good example of reinforcing links between education and training and industry. That all these initiatives, like the Pact for Skills, are very important for all stakeholders. But for instance, big companies, they have their own training programs, which is not the case for SMEs. And these are this kind of initiative are particularly important for SMEs. One word on the role of social partners to anticipate and manage change. And we have a very good example, like a Swedish example, where there is a national collective agreement on how to anticipate and manage manage transition. I will take the rest together, the concrete pilot cases and best practices, also initiative like under Pacts for Skills, whether the Skills Academy or the Battery Academy, Skills Academy. It's all about this, showcasing best practices. Attractiveness, how to attract talent, is storytelling. So basically going to university, but not only, going to also secondary education and talk directly to students and pupils. Of course, investment and funding, then this is very, very important. And for instance, in the EU, we have 65 billion that for instance, from the European Social Fund Plus and recovery funds that are in the hands of member states for skills programs. And last but not least, again, implementation, because we have a lot of initiatives, but what it counts is that they are implemented on the ground. And for instance, all these good ideas about how the curricula should look like should be implemented actually by university, by vocational and training organization and all that. I will stop here because I took a lot of time. Thank you.
Many topics addressed by the Commission. Thank you very much, Lorena, for this very synthetic and concrete presentation about what you are doing at the Commission level with the mobility transition pathway. That was very interesting. So now let's move with the next presentation. So to complement the European Commission overview presentation, I give the floor to Muriel from LHH to present us the recently published white paper published by the ADECO group. On Muriel, I think you will go a bit beyond this document. So the floor is yours.
Yes, thanks, Mathieu, and I can relate to Lorena. It's very hot in here as well, 35 degrees today, so hopefully I won't have the same. the same issues, but let's see. So thanks for moving the slides, and thank you so much for inviting me. I'm delighted to share a perspective on a subject that is very core of our preoccupation at LHH and the ADECO group. The perspective I will share is obviously from LHH, from my company, but also from our sister companies within the ADECO group, and from a variety of works, being practical, but also the white paper publications that you just mentioned as well. And it's a very practical perspective emerging from working with 22 of the largest mobility players globally, from enabling 3.5 million careers annually. And from that, about 500,000 is just dedicated to enabling people to transition, typically after a job loss. We run 3 recognized virtual coaching and bite-sized learning infrastructures, as well as globally active tech and engineering academies. So we work a lot with the mobility sector, and we are glad to be partnering with some of you and your organization across the call today, in particular the Automotive Skills Alliance, which we are part of the membership. And we exist to support organization with their people matter as they transform. So I can take this first. That's what I would be focusing on, and I've heard that in the first panel as well. Very pleased to hear that the human factor is at the core of our preoccupation, and our experience in various reskilling projects shows that only as little as 1 to 20 workers identified for reskilling, which are entitled to go to a sponsored skilling, are willing in the end to take part in the training or in the effort. So in other words, if we fix the accessibility and the financing of the training, that's going to be critically important, but it will not provide the necessary influx of workforce. And I think Lorena also mentioned about the attractiveness of the sector. So all this gravitating around people. So I could stop here, but let me give you a little bit more context. As part of our commitment to the sector, and you can click to on the next slide. We have published a paper recently. That's one of a few others that we have, but this paper includes data on what workers want in the mobility sector. And I'm not sure, I don't see the next slide, so I don't know if you've clicked already. Yeah, okay, thank you. So that's fine. It's just for you all to see the data points, which I'm not going to read out. But workers in the automotive sector believe less than in other sectors that their company is investing in skilling. At the same time, a large majority, so 6 out of 10 workers in the sector, believe that they lack the technical skills. And also about the same amount believe that they lack the soft skills. So clearly there is an issue around, or there is an opportunity here around the upskilling, up and reskilling, and let's say, up as a very general a term here, but upskilling the current workforce. But the challenge is not just about the development. And in our paper, we have highlighted, and I think you'll have the link here on the slide, but I can also send it through to the chat if you want to have a more closely look. But basically, in our paper, we have highlighted how the questions are much broader than development. And they go around, if I can put it that way, the 4 Bs, like the build, buy, borrow, and bounce. So how do you, or do we get the skills that organizations need? How do they develop them? How do I recruit them? Do I buy them? Do I borrow them? But also what happens to those people who do not have the skills that are required? How do we ensure we enable them to transition? So a lot of those topics that we have already kind of touched upon in terms of the social dimension of the transformation of the transition of the sector. If you click to the next one, so to respond to those questions, we also need to keep in mind that both organizations and individuals require a kind of a mindset shift. Jakob, you mentioned about learned to cope with the lifelong learning mindset. So I think these are the type of mindsets that we need to address, and it's about kind of changing the mindset around owning the journey. And we're not just here to speak about minor tweaks. We're here to talk about deeper changes. And on an individual level, the end of career for life is hitting, and workers face a need to enhance their sustainable employability. So I've mentioned here a couple of data points as well to give a bit of the idea where this could go, but we know that the timing is important. If we wait for workers to be separated because they no longer fit the future requirements, it's going to be too late. We have surveyed workers in transition, and 2/3 of them are telling us that they are not ready for a reskill. So if we wait until they've lost their job, it's not just inefficient, but also we don't capture the workers at the right place. So they risk of going through unemployment and staying there for too long is way bigger. Second, in general, the majority of the workers indicate they do not receive career orientation or even skilling. And this is even particular for the non-desk workers. So it's even more exacerbated in terms of them not getting access to these pieces. And with that in mind, from our own research, and that's not part of the white paper, but that's something I can also happily link you into the chat. We know from our own research that workers receiving career coaching are 3 times more likely to engage in sponsored skilling. So knowing about the skilling opportunities, one. Second is be willing to is really critical here. So with that in mind, we need to focus on inspiring and supporting the current workers to access skilling opportunities. If we move to the next slide, oh, no, one before, that's more the, there is one missing, huh? Okay, all right, no worries. If you stay on the early one, because that's this one is about the individual, but what I also want to address is the more collective part of the mindset shifts. And we know that managers are very important as we think about reskilling within a current environment. So having leaders and managers fostering this environment and this mindset of constant evolution and learning is really critically important. From the work we do with a lot of organizations, we see that very often there are lots of barriers, very practically on the ground against up and reskilling. And beyond that, the e-mobility evolution requires a deep change in identity. And I think, Lorena, you mentioned something about the attractiveness of the sector, and that's certainly very true for attracting new, I want to say new blood, but new and younger workers. But there is also a piece here that if you look at Tesla, for example, they don't consider themselves as automotive, and they consider them as digital or tech companies. So there are some deep changes that are underway if you think about an organization from the automotive sector moving into more of a tech, right? So it kind of not just from an attractiveness perspective, but also how workers identify with who they work with and for. So in summary, and that's going to be my last slide and a few words, I wanted to leave you with 3 practical, specific observations. I said in the beginning that without people, nothing, or the transition is not achievable. First, I think we need, and that's what our experience shows, is that reskilling is not a training plus. We know that only 5% of workers entitled for sponsored training engage if we leave them without any specific support. So treating reskilling with the appropriate support will massively enhance our chances of success. Second piece, and I just said that leadership and mindset are really critical. We expect a lot from the workers to engage and to follow, but actually they need to be in an environment that is following that mindset of learnability and evolution. And the third piece is the journey ahead needs to sound interesting. So we need to inspire and make it easy for individuals and for organizations. And we know that our clients, for when they engage in reskilling activities, it's extremely complex because they pay 3 times, not just financially, but that's a very simple way of looking at it. They pay for the training, they pay for the salary of the people going to the training, and they pay for a replacement for that person because They do have full books currently, so they are reskilling for something that is coming where the demand is not entirely there yet. So it's a very complex kind of logistics to get around. So we need to try and simplify as much as we can. So I want to close here. Financing agile solutions which meet the market needs and engage individuals at all level are, for me, the central elements for a successful transition. Thank you.
Many thanks, Muriel. Very interesting and very clear. Now let's talk about the industrial perspective. How does one of the main European car manufacturers like Renault address skill challenges? The question is for you, Patrick, and you have the floor to share your experience.
Thank you, Mathieu, and very happy to be with you today and to give some views about what we have done in Renault. And I fully subscribe to what has been said by the different speakers. So I wanted to highlight what we have done and decided in Renault. And it was interesting because Muriel was talking about the commitment. So we started to have a discussion with the board members at the beginning to say, what can we do together to change the way we organize the transformation of the company and how to find a model which will be supporting a sustainable development of the skills we need for the future. So we decided to create a corporate university called Renault University, which was based on two aspects. The first one was a different model, and I will come in the next slide on the model, which was based on some elements which were mentioned before by Lorena, the partnership, the capacity to work together between industrial and academics to address the question of initial education and reskilling, to be also close to the business needs and to support the development of operations and changes in technologies. And we decided to focus on different aspects which were for us critical: electrification, data analytics, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and circular industry. We said these are the levels we have to transform the mobility industry of tomorrow at our level as a car maker. So to give you an insight, we have trained 16,000 employees since we launched the program in 2021, and our objective is to train 20,000 by 2025. These figures are related to France, where we have 40,000 employees, which means that approximately 1 employee and 2 will be trained by Renault University on these topics. It doesn't mean that we don't train people on the rest. It means that we need to ensure that all the employees which are, I would say, impacted by these changes are trained. And the second point is that we had a strong focus on the blue collars. And we started the first program with the blue collars. And if you go to the next slide, Mathieu, which is detailing the model, we look at what was done by other companies and what is generically the way car manufacturers are organizing themselves. So generally, they have functional academies, which are internal academies dedicated to their employees. Sometimes you have corporate universities, which are open to the outside world, but they are essentially for leaders and managers. And we have decided to create a university for all our people and also to open it to the ecosystem. And what is important is that we considered 3 aspects in terms of development. First, having online and on-site training opportunities, notably being very close to operation when we train on new technologies to make the direct link between the people we train and the people we are going to operate on the lines. As I said before, we cover strategic themes and technologies. We built all the programs with partnerships, and we open the trainings for professionals, but also for students, for apprentices who are going to build the talent pipeline we need for tomorrow. And I put 3 initiatives on the slide. The first one was the Circular Economy Academy we have launched, which has led us to create in Flins a specific campus, which is the Circular Industry Campus, which is welcoming on 8,000 square meters all the training activities we have around circular economy, knowing that the industrial activity is just on the other side of the fence, where we have all the new entities of the group behind the Future is Neutral, which are hosted a few meters away. We have also created the e-mobility industry academy, starting by building a curriculum to train our blue collars to the fabrication, the industrialization of e-motors, electric motors. So we talk a lot about batteries today, but the motor is also an essential part of the value chain. So we created this program together with Forvia and with Renault Trucks in France, and we also associated academic partners in order to build new curriculum to be opened to students and people willing to join this organization. And we have also created with our Software Republic partners the Software Republic Talent Academy, which is more linked to cybersecurity, data, software development, intelligence, artificial intelligence, and building new certifications to ensure that we find the relevant talent on the market, knowing that most of these curriculum were not existing before. So as you can see, a direct example of what you have mentioned before on the need to work together in a very cooperative way to design the upskilling and reskilling initiative we need to support the evolution of the mobility of the future.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Very clear. So now we have a couple of minutes remaining to open the discussion, and I would like to directly bounce back on what you just said, Patrick. The Renault Group is obviously a French company, but this is above all a global large group with several establishments elsewhere in Europe with factories, etc. On the other hand, we can guess that large projects such as Renew require public fundings, for example. So my question is, within Renault, how do you manage to support your skill projects, and how do you think that we could have a better coordination of funding between, for example, the member states in Europe and the EU level?
This is a good question because I think Lorena mentioned the fact that we deal with the governments to benefit from some recovery plan initiatives. For example, this is what was done in FAMN because we had a great support from the French authorities, and same thing with the e-mobility academy. But this means that we need to convince the French authorities to support the project. But if we need to go to another country, we need to start again. So this is not because we had funds in France inside the recovery plan that it will help us to have funds for Romanian or for activities in Spain. So I think it's one of the questions we have today is how we could better coordinate the initiatives when they have been, for example, supported by a recovery plan through the different member states, and how the fact that we have already programs that have been initiated and funded could be an additional element to be considered. And I think it was also mentioned that most of the funding goes to small companies, but we all know that if the major companies are not pushing for that, small companies do not start. So if we don't launch initiative, if we don't create the environment which is needed, nothing will come up from the SMEs.
Okay, very clear. Thank you very much. Let's maybe continue with recommendation to policymakers. Muriel and Jakub, you both made a couple of observations during your different presentation. The question I have for you both is, what would you suggest to EU policymakers in order to fill remaining gaps about skills? Maybe Muriel first, and then Jakub.
Thanks, Mathieu, and thanks for giving the opportunity to just bounce back to what on what Patrick just said, because that's what the direction I would take as well, or the observations we made. First of all, I would say think in incentives and not just or not only in regulation. I think we see that in other regions that there is a lot, or there are different ways to look at the competitiveness of the evolution in the sector. And concretely, I think, when we look at funding, we have a lot of clients who are basically interested or getting into the idea of, okay, now we are ready, or we need support because we can't achieve it on our own, not just financially, but also because we need partners around. And I think you set that out very beautifully. There are different levels on which you can work and cooperate. And so it makes it extremely difficult. Actually, I had a call this morning with the public funding entity or team from one of the major supplier in Europe, and they were saying exactly the same thing. It's for them, even at national level, very difficult to replicate some of the approaches. So I think we need more transparency in terms of what is available, but also some coordination so that we can effectively have more scale in some of the great initiatives. Because if you have in country A or even in region A a great initiative, we find it extremely difficult to support even our clients to expand that to other countries. So that's certainly one. The other part around recommendation would be to also more holistically support the up and reskilling. I think it's a really real place to start, to make sure that we keep the workforce that we have that are willing to stay in that sector, to really enable them to transition. And I mentioned already before that individuals are a different place when it comes to being willing to engage in transition. So we need to make a lot of efforts in promoting and making it easier to do that. So I think it's a lot about incentives and making it easier for organization to tap into these funding, these great tools that exist, but they are so different and so partly so complex and bureaucratic. And we see that a lot as well in terms of having to change the training curricula to make it eligible for funding. So I think labor market needs need to come first.
Yeah, if I may follow on that, and as you are asking about the recommendations, I can just follow on Muriel and Patrick, because that's exactly what's, of course, there is plenty of challenges that I can have a look at, but this recommendation of a common collaboration among Europe is exactly the most important, because as said, you have some example in one region, but that's not so transferable to the other one, because you are starting again from the scratch, and then of course you might get there, and you might have a possibilities as ESF funds and so on in the different countries, but it takes enormous time to get there. It takes enormous bureaucracy to maintain it. And basically this central common approach in Europe to this education and training is needed. And of course, but on the other hand, with that comes that this central or common, not a central, but a common approach to the education and training around Europe. So some kind of academies or something that we have also tried to create as I have seen, we have, for instance, as I have shown, we have, for instance, training courses that are available, and we are trying basically to get them all around Europe, if it's massive online open course, if it's a on-site course. And that's something that we are also doing in the Automotive Skills Alliance as such. And that's I have also seen as Patrick, they are having some academies there, if it's Software Republic, if it's other. And I believe there is a lot of commonalities that we can really build like a common layer of the training courses that are offered throughout the Europe, that education and training providers might use it directly in their training courses, and industry might also use it directly. And of course, with all of that said, we have to be also careful, on the other hand, to look at that, how it's working already nowadays, what kind of initiatives we have here, if it's a Pact for Skills, if it's other initiative. And of course, even if we might maybe speaking about some kind of quick revolution, we still need to keep in our minds that what is existing and how to do not disturb already existing. But that's maybe longer discussion to that. But we need to really speed up, and just would like to highlight that we had endless discussions about that in our European projects before, also in the Blueprint project. And for instance, we have created curricula that for 40 job roles in automotive. It's a cybersecurity engineer, it's artificial intelligence experts, and the computer vision experts. It's all of that. But to And then, of course, in the battery sector, another 26. But I'm also on the national level in Czech Republic in the electromobility group that is basically implementing that curricula on the national educational system. And I have managed in the last 2 years to implement one. It's a battery technician. So of course, I'm not saying it was great project, great collaboration. Don't mean it wrong. I don't mean it wrong, but we need to speed up, because in this speed, if I calculate it, I will be implementing that what we already have on the European level next 60 years. Yeah, so we don't have this time. Yeah, so we need to really speed up and make it more flexible, modular. Thank you.
Thank you, Jakub. Lorena, do you want to bounce back on this recommendation and to say maybe a complementary word about the transition pathways, etc.?
Not necessarily. I mean, my transition pathways was ending with the word implementation, and Jakub made it very easy to me, because this is what I wanted to leave with you, that if I see a priority is implementation, because you gave a very good example that out of this all curricula, only one was implemented. Because from the European perspective, we see a lot of Back for Skills partnership. There is one on automotive and on maritime and everything. And what we see is as important is implementation, because then that all this recommendation and all the work is done to anticipate skills, to identify skills. It has to be taken up by the universities, by the training providers. There should be a complete match with the industry. So I think the implementation is key, and especially that the field is very much a subsidiarity field, where member states have a lot of competence. And I heard here incentives, coordination, transparency, common approaches, and all boils down to implementing on the ground, because we have a lot of initiative. And for instance, we hear a lot, we have this Back for Skills financed through the Commission. Can you guarantee in the future funding, EU funding for these initiatives? And this is not only what we would like to see is that this initiative have a life on their own. It doesn't mean that we will end funding, because there is a lot of EU funding foreseen for the future for skills. What we would like to see that the actors themselves pick it up and implement it in practice and have it as their own initiative, ownership. Thank you.
Thank you, Rowena. I propose to conclude with a last question that I would like to ask to each panelist. This is a very simple question. The idea of the question is to focus on only one challenge for skills on from this one table. So which one would it be, and why this one should be a priority for you? I propose to start with Patrick and to make a round of table on this question to conclude.
I think the challenge is collaboration and partnerships, because we have to innovate on the partnerships approach and to find the way to design this new kind of partnership that will help not only to design the programs, the curriculum we need, but also to make them sustainable.
Yep.
Maybe Muriel to continue on the same question.
Yeah, I'm hesitating, because actually that was the one that I would have highlighted as well. I think, but if I go one step beyond, is the partnership allows to make it sustainable and also to simplify and make it more transparent, to know what is happening and what we can replicate.
Jakub, same question.
To do not repeat, and of course, you might imagine that I would say collaboration as the president of the Back for Skills partnership, which is focused on the collaboration and the concrete actions. But if I should pick another one, just to follow up on the previous discussion, I really see a big challenge of the educational and training system in Europe in the terms of quick, flexible reaction to this massive and fast change, I would say. Thank you.
And finally, Lorena, for the last word.
Well, actually, it was the implementation word, but and especially that what maybe I should zoom out with a bigger picture, that the skills is really part of the industrial policy, EU industrial policy. For instance, the Net Zero Industry Act, which is a very recent act put forward by the Commission to keep and foster and boost manufacturing of certain technologies in the energy systems in Europe, for instance, has skills as a specific pillar. The European Green Industrial Plan has skills as a core pillar. So it's part and parcels, and there are a lot of, like, we have academies, battery skills academy, we have the Net Zero Industry Academies. So we have a lot of initiative, but again, hopefully this will be implemented speedily because it's not a Commission can put all this in place and put the actors together, but it boils down for things to happen in practice and change in on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you. So I propose to conclude. We overpassed a little bit the slot. So first, thank you very much for your participation, the panelists, of course, for their very interesting, very inspiring contributions, but also the participants, obviously. The goal of the meeting was to, as Jean-Baptiste said in introduction, to open a debate on sharing knowledges on skills challenges with face in the automotive sector. I think that we take away quite good overview, quite good concrete local initiative, good example, etc. So I would say that the objective of the roundtable has been, let's say, achieved. So yeah, that's good. Last point, just for your information, but I think we discussed the point in the chat. I will come back to you just after the meeting with the slides, and I will come back to you in the coming days with the minutes of the roundtable. And obviously, I stay at your disposal for any additional question, additional need on the panelists as well. I guess if you have any question. Thanks again, and have a good day, a good rest of the day.